Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Next in Time podcast. I'm your host, Esti Tangarala, and today our guest is none other than Aditya Sharma, who is the founder and CEO of HiCounselor. After working at leading tech companies in the Bay Area for nearly 4 years, he decided to leave his full-time job and started to help people find a job in top tech companies, which is how he started this startup, HiCounselor. And so HiCounselor is a unique career accelerator that provides the coaching and resources job seekers and professionals need to land their next job. So one particular service they want to provide is helping startups find entry-level tech talent. And so Aditya is looking to make an impact in helping with people with startups providing opportunities to people who are looking to help build their tech careers. And so yeah, Aditya, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, ST, for inviting me to the show.
Yeah, no worries. I hope this introduction was good enough in terms of how I brought you
Oh, for
in.
sure. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So is it like true that you've been working with the startup for a year and then you've basically attracted a lot of potential clients on your end, and then you're ready to close more rounds of funding and whatnot. So give me the overall view in terms of what you're doing.
hmm Yeah. So, as you mentioned, right, I used to work at Deloitte, and during my time at Deloitte, I was a part of the Salesforce team where I was implementing Salesforce. But apart from that, I was also part of the recruitment team where I used to interview candidates on every Friday for Salesforce and data science job roles. And that's where I realized that landing a job in tech roles is a very challenging task for recent graduates. That made me leave my job 2 years ago from Deloitte and start this company. And we bootstrapped, started with just three candidates. That was our first cohort. And until now, we have helped more than 250 candidates land a job in the US. These candidates have landed jobs at more than 80 different companies. And the great part for employers is that they don't have to pay anything to hire candidates. Because if you see specifically in Silicon Valley, employers pay $5,000 to $15,000 to hire one software developer or data scientist. We have reduced that cost to literally $0. And also,
But
as I,
But yeah, just wondering, why is it very difficult to find tech talent? Because everyone keeps saying finding a job in Silicon Valley in, let's say, in software engineering is like it shouldn't be difficult. Yet I've been told by everyone that, it's so easy. You should just, if as long as you work hard, get the skills, you should be hired. That's what I've been told. But then that's not the reality, right?
And that's the situation for experienced people. I mean, if you have once you have 3 years of work experience in, like, say, React JS, Java, or .NET, right? I mean, there are tons of employers who could hire you. But what about an entry-level software engineer, someone who has zero work experience and only has like academic knowledge? Every time they apply, companies ask them that, hey, get some experience and come back. That's where we jump in, right?
Yeah.
We try to create this candidate's profile in a manner where we have some credibility. We make them go through 1 to 3 months of technical training, and after that we have different level of assessments like test gorilla assessments which we present to employers. Also, we provide candidates some hands-on work experience of working at startups. So all this work experience, the training, that upskill these candidates, and then they are employed by employers.
All right, makes sense. So why is it that let's say for example, why is it usually difficult for employers to say that, okay, why can't we just put faith in this person to at least let's work with them, train them, and make them who they are in the area of software engineering or tech? Like why like
Mhm.
another Mike, so let me phrase that better. I was gonna ask that if you see you mentioned that it's very difficult for entry level candidates to find jobs in the software engineering field. Is there a particular reason why like employers are not like able to say, okay, let's take someone in who has a good attitude, let's work with them, let's hone in their skill set? Why is there a reason why it's difficult for that, or why?
Yeah, so look, so it's not like there are no employers who are willing to invest in candidates. If you look at like the Fortune 500 companies, many mid-sized companies, they are definitely willing to onboard entry-level candidates, give them 1 year of 2 year or 2 years of rotational program where they can gain some work experience. But if you talk about startups, right, a startup that is just like a pre-seed or seed round funded, it's very difficult for them to onboard someone, train them for 5 to 6 months, and then get some output of it. And I can easily understand because I'm a startup founder. And when I have to develop anything at my company, my first priority a year ago was always a developer with 3 years of work experience or more, right? But
Yeah.
now we have started onboarding candidates. Now we are investing in them. But for early stage startups, it's difficult to get
Yeah,
the.
yeah, because it's true that early stage startups definitely needs people with more experience than because I always thought like, okay, the way I structured the startup world was that okay, is a CEO, there's a technical founder, and I always thought the technical founder is always okay, he's kind of young, inexperienced and anything, but he's
Mhm.
willing to use a startup as a vehicle to build his portfolio. So
Mhm.
but then, but then we've seen that there's just a lot of people out, a lot of technical people who don't know what they're doing, but they have to start relying on more experienced people. People, is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I mean, even if there is a startup that has a very young technical co-founder, right? They have a very high level vision of what they want to build, but when they have to implement uh, technologies like Kafka, right, for sequencing, right, they definitely need someone experienced. That's where they look for, like, okay, can I have someone with 5 years of work experience? And that's where we are trying to upskill candidates with certain skills, right, so that they join a startup and become productive in the very first few weeks.
Got it. All right. So in the meantime, let's get to know more about you, Aditya. Tell me about where did you come from and what made you, tell me about your journey and how you came to the US.
So I was born and raised back in India, in Jaipur, which is a city in Rajasthan, in the north part of India. So I studied there. I studied my engineering back in India. After completing my engineering, I worked at Ericsson Technologies. It's a telecom company. So I worked there for 1 year as a network engineer, and then I moved to the US for my master's degree. I studied at Duke University,
Right.
studied Master of Engineering Management there. And during my time at Duke, I was very, very inclined toward kicking off my career in consulting firms, specifically Big Four consulting. So,
Like Deloitte, in your background, it's like you work with Deloitte, you work with PwC, and
yeah.
those are the big names in terms of consulting in a way, right?
Yeah, and if you talk about like tech consulting, the big four firms that are called, that is Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. So
Yeah.
these four were my target companies. And when I was in my final year of my
What
graduation,
year was this?
what?
What year
It's
was
2015, 2015.
2015? Okay.
Yeah, so 2015, I targeted these companies, and eventually I got offer from all four, and I joined PwC in Chicago. That was my first job, and I worked in Chicago for 1 year, and then I realized that I should move to San Francisco to stay like more close to the entrepreneurship community. And that's when I decided to move to San Francisco with PwC, but they did not allow me. So I changed my job from PwC to Deloitte. That's how that transition happened.
I mean, back then in 2015, there was no such thing as remote work, like universal remote work. Imagine if you had the job right now, you could have, at least during COVID times, you would have just, taken the job, moved to San Francisco and be like, you know what? Hey, I'm happy working here.
Yep. That was I mean, at that point of time, there was no concept like this, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I heard from some of my former colleagues that we used to travel every single week in consulting. Every Monday morning, we used to take flight, and Thursday evening, we used to come back, okay, wherever our client was. Now in COVID, that thing is absolutely gone. Nobody in consulting is traveling.
Yeah. So I mean, like I'm just saying, like as a consultant, because I like to know more about it, because I know a lot of people in that field, and a lot of our audience would want to know about that experience being a consultant. Like you work with one client. You work in a in a major consulting firm who have clients all over the world, which is large businesses. Like, do you have to always travel to the client's location to get work done, then go back to your home location, or what's the case like
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, so if I talk about pre-COVID times when I worked at Deloitte, yes, that was the scenario. Every single week, you have to go to the client location. For example, my very first project was in Florida, Miami, basically. And there was a construction company, and we were implementing Salesforce. The entire Deloitte team from different part of US. I was living in Chicago. We used to take Monday morning flight, stay there for 4 days. Thursday evening, we used to take flight back and back to home.
Like,
You can
well, what? Just wonder why wouldn't you be in Florida just to be remain there?
Yeah, because according to consulting companies, it would change. It would impact the tax structure.
Yeah.
because every state tax is different and you're hired as an employee of a certain state. And when you work in Florida, your tax would be different.
Right.
So they do not allow you to stay over there, rather than you just have to travel.
Right. Right. So it's like basically you're paying if you like you're working in Florida but paying Illinois taxes.
Yes.
That's the bummer. Yeah, because
Right.
it's I mean that is I mean Illinois taxes is pretty expensive. Florida has no state income tax, which if
Mhm.
imagine if you had worked in Florida, you could have just paid no state income tax.
No, no, I totally understand that that's how their structure was. And also, if you think about like someone who has like spouse and kids, right? And you get a new project every 3 months. I mean, people don't leave their home, right? They have a set home, car, and everything. So it's difficult for them to move their home every 3 or 4 months because projects are usually 3 to 6 months. It's
Right.
not longer than that.
All right, cool, cool. So now you worked in Deloitte, you then worked with PwC, and you say where do you only work in those companies, or do you work in like major tech companies here in the Bay? I'm trying to remember.
No, so I worked at Deloitte and PwC, but their customers, like the clients for which we implemented Salesforce, they were the big tech companies like Fox Studios, Amgen, Disney, Facebook. So when you implement Salesforce for these clients, you literally work from their office as their employees.
Oh, got it, got it. And so you decided to transition from working in these consulting firms into building a startup. Just want to make sure this is your first startup, right?
This is my sixth startup, but this is my second full-time startup.
Wait, I didn't know you had 6 previous startups before. Tell me more about that.
So, I mean, the idea of having a company was, I mean, when I was in undergrad back in 2012, back in India, I always wanted to have a company. So I was always trying, along with my full-time jobs, with my studies, I was trying to build something. So my very first startup was SEO digital agency that didn't work out. I mean, all these companies, they worked out a little bit, right? But none of them was a big success. Uh, so that was the first one. And then when I came to Duke, I started another company called EduLife. I got a great traction there. There is a startup competition called Duke Startup Challenge,
Yeah.
which has $50,000 prize. I was like first runner up in that with EduLife. Got a lot of traction from VCs, but again, with that also didn't work out later. So a lot of other startups. Eventually, this HiCounselor startup worked out, and where I was able to identify the specific pain point of customers, and also uh, investors also really liked it.
Right, right. And so then yeah, like I said, you transitioned to HiCounselor. What was the catalyst as to why you moved from your consulting job to starting this company?
hmm I mean, I was very passionate about like helping these recent graduates land a job, and I personally feel that I have this expertise to help people land a job. Right? If I work with any candidate, I can guarantee that I'll help this person will certainly get a job. So that's so look, but I wanted to implement it for a very large number of candidates, not just for one or two people. And that's where I like it's a good time that we can implement technology, we can utilize a proper training curriculum to help people land a job.
That makes sense. So yeah, just tell me more about the mission and vision behind HiCounselor. Like, what is your goal? What's the mission, and what are you looking to achieve with HiCounselor?
So, ST, when I was studying at Duke, right, and I was about to graduate in a few months, and job search, it was a challenge for me, right, and I did not, and it was just not for myself, but many of my batchmates who came from a very good background, we did not know any brand at that point of time that we were like, okay, for any startups, YC is a go-to play. That if you get in YC, there are high chances that you'll get investment, you'll get right mentorship. But there is no company for recent graduates that recent graduates can say, okay, if we get an admission at HiCounselor, there are high chances that we'll land a job, right? So I
Right.
want to create that brand for recent graduates that they say, okay, this is the go-to place. If we get there, we'll get the right mentorship, what to do, and the right connections to land a job.
Got it. And so why? So the whole purpose right now is to be able to land tech talent into like small companies, startups, or even large companies. Or are you looking to just build it only in like the large companies or startups? What's your
So
target market?
So we are certainly not targeting startups, specifically very small startups like pre-seed funded or non-funded startups, because I don't believe that they would be willing to onboard like the entry-level talent. So our target is primarily like Fortune 500 companies, or like the mid-market companies, mid-level companies, uh, and some of the Series B or later funded startups. As I told you earlier, also that for non-funded startups or startups that have very minimum funding, we help them provide unpaid interns.
Right.
So if there is any startup uh, who needs more hand, right, to get some work done related to software development, data analysis, data science, or product management, we can provide them interns who dedicate 3 to 4 hours every single day, and they don't have to pay to these interns to us. These interns will get some work experience, and this startup will get some free help.
Got it. And so when you started this, like when in the first couple of months when you began to start, like what was the traction like? What was the buzz?
So when we started this, trust me, there was no buzz. Right? Literally nobody joined our very first cohort, and I reached out to a lot of candidates. I told them that okay, I will help you land a job, but they did not trust us. Then finally, we got 3 candidates. All those 3 candidates, they graduated from Duke University, and they just believed in me. They thought, okay, this guy graduated from Duke, so probably he can get us
He's
a
got a
job.
high, he's basically Duke. You got the Duke brand written all over you and say, okay, hey, let's trust this guy because he went to a prestigious institution like we did. So
Yeah, and also they thought, okay, he has already worked at 2 consulting firms, so he can at least help us prepare for those. So those were the 3 candidates who joined me, and
yeah.
then all those 3 candidates landed a job, and since then we have graduated 26 cohorts and onboarded about 400 people in our at HiCounselor.
All right, nice, nice. So basically, you built a large network of people. Like, what is your overall strategy in attracting these people to your thing? I mean, other than the message saying that, okay, we'll land you top tech talent, top tech jobs. Sorry, I'm thinking in the mind of a startup more than I'm think of in the mind of a startup like an actual tech worker. So, what is the strategy you've been using to be able to attract these people to come to you?
So, look, there are multiple channels, right, at which you hit your target customers. For us, one very big channel is definitely we conduct virtual job fairs in which we invite employers, because for employers also it's very important to promote their employer brand. So, and in this virtual job fairs, we provide candidates an opportunity to interact with the employers, look at the job opportunities, apply over there. Okay.
Got it.
So these virtual job fair, like our last virtual job fair was attended by more than 10,000 people and by more than 50 employers, including TikTok, Google, Amazon. So that's the first thing.
What did these large companies see in you in terms of that potential that okay, they're good, you'll be the guy supplying them the talent they need.
Mhm. Uh, so most of the companies that go to universities to hire tech talent, most of the time they struggle hiring candidates who know the latest tech. For example, universities are still teaching Java as a primary backend language, right? But if you see, Golang is one of the most in-demand languages at this point of time.
Yeah,
So when we onboard,
especially yeah, because I'll say this, I know some people who are work in major companies right now, and I always thought like the entry level language you need to know to get into those companies is like Java or Python or even or C plus or C sharp.
Mhm.
Those, but then but then I realized they were not mentioning any of these languages. They need you need to know Go. They say you have to know Go if you want to get in there. That's
Yeah.
one language I never even heard of until until my friends told me about that.
Go, Ruby on Rails, React JS, right? In
Yeah,
universities, there's not much focus. And even if some universities teach you these languages, they do not get make you go through the practical project, like the hands-on real world projects, right? Not
yeah.
we're not talking about academic projects. That's what differentiate us from many other universities. And on top of the technical training, we also train candidates on behavioral aspect, which is very, very
Like
important.
soft skills.
Yes.
Yeah, because one thing tech people really should be able to develop is that right attitude to to be able to show up and get the work done.
Yep.
But what is one thing? Okay, because you have noticed, like, I'll tell you this story because for me, back in university, I actually started off as a CS major before
Mhm.
went into econ and everything. But one thing I realized is that it was not, I felt like it was like the way I was taught the initial round of job. I felt like it was not very conducive. And at the same time, I was like, I don't know, because I was a very slow learner. Whenever I try to learn something highly technical, I'm very slow.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes the way I was taught in the university was that I was just told to do these projects. I got to make sure you get these deadlines, and all they do is just put on the whiteboard, just explain. They just told you this, and then now you're on your own trying to solve these problems. And
Hmm.
sometimes there are always the issues are that some people can have the problem solving capabilities, but others don't yet. They're still trying to work on it. And sometimes I feel like many universities, they just want to focus more. They just want to incubate more people who are in who basically have the problem solving abilities that they identify early on. So do you feel like your thing that you're providing is doing something different? Like, okay, helping out potential engineers who feel like they could they have a knack they don't have the knack yet to solve problems, but they are willing to work on developing that.
Yeah, no, that's very important point, ST. So look, every student or candidate is different, right? You cannot have like one rule of thumb for every candidate, and that's where our platform comes into play. Our training program is anywhere between 1 to 3 months. Now, the 1 month, uh, after a month, we and our platform analyzes the current status of a candidate, and based on this candidate's learning and standing, it presents different form of learning and the courses to candidates. So if a candidate shows that, okay, I'm ready for interviews, right? We present this candidate to the employers. If a candidate is not ready, we provide this candidate recommendation, a different type of courses, more in-depth knowledge, more time that they can take to learn skills. And once they're ready, we present them to the employer. So there's no one rule of thumb for everyone.
Yeah, because one thing I could say is that this issue of like people, like a lot of companies, they're complaining about the lack of supply of tech workers here in the US, that they have to outsource it overseas and everything. And one thing I always felt like it was not because of the fact that, okay, I mean, a lot of people want to learn how to code or want to program, but the way the universities have their students continue on with the program is if they only have, it's not like directly, but in terms of how the curriculum is built, they just want to let people who have the ability and do or like the early talent, early bloomer kind, or early
Mhm.
bloomer types, they want them to succeed so that out of the university while everyone else is still like struggling. So do you, in a way, that's
I mean, I won't say that the universities don't have the right intentions. Probably it's very difficult to change the set structure that they have, right? While at startups, it's very flexible. I mean,
yeah.
if I see something's not working out, or there could be a better way of functioning, I would change it within the next few hours, right? While it's not possible at universities.
All right, cool. And so where are you currently at with your startup?
Where are we currently at? I mean, as I said, we have already helped 250 candidates land a job. In terms of revenue, we are currently at 1.5 million revenue run rate. We have raised about $2 million in
Nice.
pre-seed round from a few VCs and angels in Silicon Valley. And we are on our path to raise a $10 million round in probably 3 to 4 months from now.
Got it. And so so that's so in terms of the future of High Council, what do you see it as?
So we see it as a global platform for engineers and mostly like software developers and data scientists, where they can come learn these skills, and then we can automate the job search process. One thing that I forgot to tell you is that we have developed a technology that allow job seekers uh, to automatically apply to the job positions. So if you're looking for a software engineer job, you just enroll in HiCounselor, and every morning our tool will automatically apply to 50 job positions for you. So imagine you're saving 2 to 3 hours every day that you would spend in manually applying to the job positions.
Right.
So we're
Yeah,
trying to
LinkedIn. I remember when you apply for jobs on LinkedIn, it's like, okay, easy apply, click next, easy apply, click next.
that's only on LinkedIn, but if you go to any other platform like Indeed,
Yeah.
right? Or you go to like Greenhouse, Liver, Workday, everywhere you have to fill in your name, you have to upload your resume. Every company has different set of questions, right? And that's a very time consuming process.
Yeah. And also, do you plan on like expanding beyond the tech side? Like, do you plan on offering the same type of programs for different career fields, including like marketing, like sales or something like that? Or is it only going to be strictly tech?
Not immediately. We want to focus on tech because there are a lot of job roles in tech that are still untapped, right?
Yeah.
For example, security is a big domain where we want to jump in, uh, and Salesforce is another big aspect where we'll be doing a lot of work. So right now in tech, but you never know in future.
All right, cool. So yeah, we're just gonna wrap up with this final question. So, what advice would you give to other founders out there and who are looking to build something for the future?
I mean, I would like from a founder perspective, I would always say that try to build something that is not dependent upon investors' money. I mean, you should always build a business that is self-sustainable. It may not be like a $1 billion startup, but you should build it in a manner that you do not need any external funds to survive because you may or may not get funding, right?
Right,
So, but if you have a sustainable business where you can earn or like where you can match your at least 8 to 5 job salary, then
yeah.
I think you can have a way longer runway. And once you have a little bit longer runway, eventually you'll figure out something and things will work out in your favor.
All right, cool. Sounds good. Thank you, Aditya, for coming on this podcast and looking forward to seeing how High Counselor takes off.
Thank you so much, ST, for your time.